evening, great souls. Welcome to our Kirtan. We will be ready to start here shortly. Let's begin this evening with a prayer together. Ask Divine Mother to bless our time and the sacredness of our awareness inwardly. You can pray out loud with me, or you can pray in your heart. Divine Mother, Heavenly Father, beloved friend God, great masters of self-realization, Jesus Christ, Babaji Krishna, Lahiri Mahashaya, Swami Sri Yukteswarji, beloved Guru, Paramhansa Yoganandaji, all saints and sages of all religions, all times, lovingly we bow to all of you. Guide our hearts and our minds. Guide our consciousness, that we may soar in thy light, flow through our voices and our hearts, in song and devotion, in stillness and meditation, in love for thee. Om, peace. Amen. This evening we thought to go down a slightly different trail, you might say. We're going to spend the evening in Italy. And this is kind of came up al improviso, you might say. That's how they would say this in Italian, which is to say it kind of came up spontaneously. But we thought, once in a while, like at the end of Sunday service, Nirmala and I will often play, or basically always play, Gioia, 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 which is the Italian translation of joy, 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 ever new joy, the chant by Yogananda. But we seldom really sing Italian chants. I mean, on our pilgrimage to Italy, of course we did, and we had lots of sadhanas, meditations at the center there, and so our group got to experience the life and the chanting and even prayers being led in Italian, etc. But they didn't end the Festival of Light done in Italian, with songs done once in Italian and then once in English, so they could get a feel for it. But I realized that many people haven't had that experience, and it's just really lovely. Some of these chants that we'll do tonight were actually written in Italian by Swami Kriyananda, and they're quite beautiful. They're sort of meant to be in Italian, and we have an English translation of one kind or another, sometimes done by him and sometimes by someone else. But there's a special vibration in the Italian, and so we thought to share a bunch of those, and then we'll share some stories from. We both lived in Italy. I lived there for about a year, Nimala for about 2.5, and then we spent we visited a number of times, one of those times quite extensively for almost 3 months. So we have, you know, lots of stories, fun stories of adventures in Italy. So we'll tell some of those and we'll have a short meditation after some of the chants. Take this evening, as we would do in any kirtan, take the little pauses as a chance to go deeper. It's a moment in time where there's a pause. It's you might even think of it as, in our meditation practice, we will do a technique, and then before we go into the next one, there may be a little momentary shift of energy. And that moment is precious. That moment is important because it's like we've assimilated, or we've accumulated a kind of energy from practicing one thing, and now we're going to go into the next. And we don't want to just sort of, boom, just go right in necessarily. It helps to take that moment and kind of claim it and enjoy it as well. That's really important. So take those short pauses. They're just a few seconds to a minute type of thing. And then we'll do one meditation that's a little bit longer, just maybe 4 or 5 minutes, something like that. Okay. So our first chant will be Porta del mio cuore, which is door of my heart. Open wide I keep for thee. And we'll sing it through once or twice in Italian and once in English. Del mio cuore tengo aperta io per te.
Porta del
mio cuore tengo aperta io per te. Vedrai tu, una volta vieni a me. Vedrai tu, una volta vieni a me.
Fuggiranno i piedi senza vederti, Signore.
Fuggiranno i piedi senza vederti, Signore. Notte di, io ti cerco, notte di, io ti cerco, notte di.
Porta del mio cuore tengo aperta io per te. Porta del mio cuore tengo aperta io per te. Vedrai tu, una volta vieni a me. Vedrai tu, una volta vieni a me. Fuggiranno i miei piedi senza vederti, Signore. Fuggiranno i piedi senza vederti, Signore. Notte di, io ti cerco, notte di. Notte di, io ti cerco, notte di. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Door of my heart, open wide I keep for thee. Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Wilt thou come, wilt thou come, just for once come to me? Will my days smile away without seeing thee, my Lord? Will my days smile away without seeing thee, my Lord? Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Night and day, I look for thee, night and day. Lord of my heart, open wide I keep for thee.
We'll do Voglio solo te, Dio te, solo te. This is I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee.
Voglio solo te, Dio te, solo te. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee, only thee. 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 I want only Lord, thee only. I want only thee, Lord, thee only. I want only thee, Lord, thee only thee. 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 I want only thee, Lord, thee. I want only thee, Lord, thee only 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 thee.
Sing Vieni presto Gesù, which translates to Come quickly, Jesus, or in the English version of the chant, Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy love and fill me with thy joy. And hopefully we remember to put it in that order so we sing the same words at the same time. To me, vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni, 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 vieni presto Gesù, 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 vieni presto Gesù, vieni. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy light. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Come to me, Jesus, fill me with thy joy. Vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni, vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni, vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni, vieni presto Gesù, 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 vieni, vieni, vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni, vieni presto Gesù, vieni, vieni presto Gesù, vieni presto Gesù, vieni presto Gesù, vieni, We'll have a short meditation after this next chant. And this is Sri Yogananda, Guide to Inner Freedom. Steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusion. Sri Yogananda, guida all'infinito, vieni nella casa mia, portami l'amore. And the literal translation of the Italian is not exactly the same as the English, which often happens in these things because it takes more syllables to get the words out in Italian. So the literal translation is
Come into my house.
come into my house. Exactly. Sri Yogananda, guida all'infinito, guide to the infinite. Vieni nella casa mia, come into my house. Bring me love.
Bring me love.
Bring me into thy love, or bring me into love. Yeah. Sweet. Sri Yogananda, guida all'infinito, vieni nella casa mia, portami l'amore. Sri Yogananda, guida all'infinito, vieni nella casa mia, portami l'amore. Sri Yogananda, guida all'infinito, vieni nella casa mia, portami l'amore. Sri Yogananda, will to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions.
Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom. Steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom. Steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guida all'infinito, vieni nella casa mia, portami l'amore. Guida all'infinito, vieni nella casa mia, portami l'amore. Sri Yogananda, guida all'infinito, vieni nella casa mia, portami l'amore. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Sri Yogananda, guide to inner freedom, steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions. Steal into my heart of hearts, banish my delusions.
Let's meditate for a few minutes. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. So, do you want to tell a story? Should we sing one of our little songs first, or what would you like?
We could sing a little song.
We could sing a little song for you. We have we have the Italian version of. Hang on one second here. Let me get this set right. Cherish These. Amalfi Coast is kind of its official name. And what's it called in Italian anyway? I don't even remember now.
We were looking through our books today and found this one, so it's not perfectly practiced, but it's fun.
Sei in un angolo del mondo.
Let's start over.
How about we do it instrumentally once?
Okay.
Sei in un angolo del mondo, c'è la purezza, l'umiltà, vero amore e onestà. Fermati lì, null'altro ha valore. Sei in un angolo del mondo, c'è la purezza, l'umiltà, vero amore e onestà. Fermati lì, null'altro ha valore. Is there anywhere on earth perfect freedom, sorrow's death, selfless friendship, blameless birth, cherished needs, not else has birth. Okay, so do you want to go first?
You can go first.
Stories? Okay, I will go first. So, I will tell some vignettes, and you might could zoom in on me here just for the fun of it. Watch your little thingy there. You go. So I moved to Italy in the summer of 1988 and spent about a year there, which was enough time to get fluent enough in Italian that I could teach some classes, and not well particularly, but I chiseled my way through as best I could. I knew some Spanish before going there, and so that gave me a little leg up on the process. And my head's cut off, honey. Sorry, I'm looking at myself
Sorry
there.
about that.
It's okay. It's been known to happen. I've got Krishna on my shoulder, and it's all good.
That's all you need.
Yeah. So I'll just start with the adventure of getting there itself was kind of interesting. Um, I had been in the construction field for quite a number of years at that point, about 8 years, and I had a big truck that we called the Gray Whale. It was a big Chevy pickup truck, and I was had arranged to sell that um, to Gary McSweeney in Palo Alto, Ananda Palo Alto, who I didn't know real well at that point, and I was concerned because we had bought the truck with 65,000 miles. We had used it vigorously for several years, 3 or 4, no, actually 5 or 6 years at that point, maybe even 7 years, and had put another 60 something thousand miles on it. So now it had 120 something thousand on it. It was still doing okay. It was reasonably well maintained, but I mean, I thought, yeah, yeah, what if I sell this thing to him? Because I mean, him buying the truck was part and parcel of me being able to afford to go to Italy and be there for a while. And as it turned out, he got great use out of that truck and ran it up to 200,000 miles, basically ran the wheels off of it for many years, even longer than I had it. He had it. So he ended up thrilled. It all worked out. It was all good. But the drive there to from Ananda Village, which is where I was coming from, down to Palo Alto was itself a little bit of an adventure because the air conditioning had gone out on the truck. It used to have this powerful, I mean, air conditioner that you could just, I mean, icicles could hang off your face, from this thing going through the valley when it was hot in the summertime. When that air conditioner was on, well, it conked out, and I didn't have time to fix it, and I felt badly, and blah 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 blah. But anyway, I drove through the valley. The valley was like it's been in these last days or weeks. It was 112 in the valley on the day that I drove through, which for those who use Celsius, that is about 40, almost 45 degrees Celsius, 44 point whatever, and which is called hot. And it was like a kind of out of body experience because you could have the windows open, you could have the windows closed. It didn't matter what you did, you were just going to roast. And so, anyway, I got to the coastal range, so past the Central Valley here towards the Bay Area. And as soon as you go over those hills, it went down to 65 degrees. I mean, it was just like the temperature was in half, and it was cold. After you go through the valley and you're just absolutely roasting, and you wonder if you're going to survive. You wonder if you're going to keep your wits about you enough to drive in a straight line. Anyway, anyway, that was part of the adventure of getting off to Italy. Um, then, several of us were flying on that trip to get to Italy together. And of course, we got loaded up with all kinds of stuff. Now, of course, this being 1988, the security restrictions were a lot fewer in those days. Um, I got loaded up with a tent that looked like a corpse in a sack. I mean, it was this huge canvas tent that was designed for, it seemed like a small army to camp in. And somebody very lovingly handed this thing to me at the last minute, said, "Here, they really, really, really need this over there. So take it over there." And I was carrying piano hinges for Arjuna to put benches, meditation benches together. And, and it was not just a few of these hinges. I mean, and a piano hinge, you think of a grand piano. I mean, these things were like 4 or 5 feet long, and he wanted them cut down into little 6-inch pieces, not only so they could fit in your suitcase, but so that they could use them that way for anyway. So, I mean, I probably had 20 pounds of hinges in my stuff. So anyway, I got this. They wouldn't let me check the tent, so I ended up having to carry this tent. It looked like I was carrying a human body onto the airplane. Shoved it in the overhead bin. I think I might have had a guitar, which probably also went in the overhead bin. Luckily, the flight from San Francisco stopped in New York, and I was able, this that being the day back in the day, I was able to get off the plane, go all the way out to the gate where the original ticketing counter, and I was able to check that blasted tent the rest of the way because they didn't count up. We had maxed out the suitcases that we could check, which is why I couldn't check the tent the first time. And but they didn't know about that there then, so I was able to check that and get rid of it and not have to futz with it in the airport. And but I was very concerned about the logistics. I mean, I had built these boxes that were the exact size. They were cubes, 20.5 inches on a side, which equals out to just less than the 62 inches that you're allowed. And that maximizes the cubic inches of space that you get to put stuff in. I had three of those. And, and all the other people had similar quantities of stuff. And I was really concerned, I mean, my God, we're descending on Italy from an airplane, but I mean, we're coming piling in with a lot of stuff. Oh, it's no problem. We got a big van. So I thought, okay, we'll see. Well, they did have a big van and all the stuff, piled that into the van, and a bunch of us got into a different van. But I had never been out of the country at that point. And so, I had to get a passport. The flight inevitably is overnight, and it's a very odd night for those who've done this. You fly in the afternoon or evening, you arrive the following morning, but it's been a very short night in between, and you're all excited, you're very wired. It's like, so you hardly sleep. And so you arrive in Italy, and it's a new day now. And the assignment is you have to stay up the whole day until the night. God forbid that you take a nap, because it's like you die if you take a nap. You'll never get up again. So, but anyway, landing over there, we landed in time to be picked up and then taken to a restaurant on the Mediterranean in, I want to say, Civitavecchia, um, which is a town that's not terribly far from the international airport. And it's a beautiful little town, and it was a beautiful little restaurant. And I had caprese for the first time in my life, which is mozzarella di bufalo, which is this mozzarella that's made from buffalo milk, and it's fresh. It's a fresh cheese, so it was soft, and it's fresh basil, and it's tomatoes that went to college and came home with a PhD. I mean, it's like, you're just out at a different level with this stuff. And pizza that was, you each get your own little pizza, and it's really thin crust, and mamma mia, it was like dying and going to heaven. And it was this very surreal kind of feeling because you haven't had any sleep. You're 9 hours ahead to a different time zone, to a new day, but it still feels like it's midnight, but you're eating pizza. It just was like, whoa, it's a whole other world. And I'm sure I must have conked big time on the drive back to Assisi, which is a 2 or 3 hour drive from there, in the afternoon. And it was hot. Rome in the summer is pretty toasty also. Um, but that trip was very blessed. It was challenging in many ways because learning a new culture, learning a new language. I mean, we were many Americans together, so all of us spoke English to each other, which was a bit of a crutch. It made the transition a little easier, but just trying to get adjusted to a new rhythm, a new way of doing things. It struck me that the as I was saying earlier how the translations often he had to approximate or even go in a completely different direction with the Italian version. So this song we just sang, "Se in un angolo," if there is in any corner of the world, angolo is a corner, um, the purity, humility, uh, vero amor, true love, and honesty. s- Stop yourself there. Go to that place and stop, basically. Stay at that place, in other words. Um, Nothing else has value. And yeah, that's fine. You know, it's I the language says a lot about a culture. And so one of the things that the language says about Italian is that it's going to be a little different. It's going to take a little longer to say the same thing. You know, English is very compressed, and it's like you can get the ideas out, boom, 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 boom. And, and there's all these words that there aren't in Italian. I remember talking with our translator in Italy, and she would say, we just don't have all those words. Or if you're going to convey that word, then you have to sort of use a whole paragraph to explain it to them that it means this, but it has that extra nuance and these other, little colorations added to it. So what I discovered about all that, because it sounds like it's a liability that it takes that much longer in Italian, but see, it's beautiful. It's and it's loving and it's joyful. And God, we laughed. We laughed so hard our heads hurt over there. And I don't mean we laughed at Italians. Okay, there were times when something seemed goofy or incomprehensible, or just somebody would have this wildly emotional reaction and we would just be sort of like stunned and amazed. Okay, there were those times. But there is this joy of living in Italy that is just contagious and beautiful. And I don't know, it was moving. I remember I worked on publishing. I'll just tell a couple other little quick things about that time. I could go on and on and on and on, but um, allow me finish the point about the syllables in the word. When you do it, and when you do it well, because Italian by definition, they even say this, if it does not sound beautiful when it comes out of your mouth, it cannot be correct. It's just by definition wrong if it doesn't sound beautiful. So it's like, if you're going to do it, you do it beautifully. So, the caprese itself is fairly simple. I mean, my goodness, there's not that many ingredients. You've got the mozzarella, you've got the basil, you've got the tomatoes. I mean, an olive oil over the top. And the olive oil, chances are, was grown in the olive trees that are over there in the, back part of the property. I mean, it's like, how simple can it be? And yet it's like, wow, every ingredient is just like flawless. It's just like spot on. We had all these spiritual experiences from the food. It was like, you grow up with, you know, Chef Boyardee, you know, SpaghettiOs or some idiot thing that happens in America. And it's like, no, 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 that's not Italian. I mean, I tried to order pesto down in Napoli or Sorrento or someplace, and they just looked at me and it's like, well, that's Geneva. That's up in the north. We don't do that down here. I mean, there's hundreds and thousands of Italian cuisines by region. I mean, it's very much more particular than we are typically knowing in this country. It's a little more homogenized over here. But um, anyway, one of the adventures and one of the little dramas that precipitated great laughter was I had two jobs in Italy that involved doing things that none of us really quite knew how to do. We were The desktop publishing world was just in its tiny infancy at that point. We were using these little Macintosh computers that had a screen about yay big, and they had these two disk drives, two little floppy disk drives in them. And you'd feed a disk in, and then it would pop out, and then you'd feed a different one in, and I mean, it was just, anyway, a drama. It was but we were publishing Swamiji's Rays of the Same Light in Italian. And we were figuring out how to get that laid out typeset. I wasn't a typesetter at that point. That in my life, that came, 10 years later, roughly 8 or 9 years later. Um, but we were trying to get this book printed. And so that involved going to find a printer who could do the job, who could understand what we were trying to achieve, etc. And I was traveling with our teacher. We had had an Italian teacher who came. There were enough of us Americans at that point who needed to learn Italian. As I said, I traveled in a group. Most of us knew no Italian or minimal. And typically, people had gone individually to Perugia, which is about an hour away, to take the Italian classes in Perugia, which are world famous, actually. There's a very good school there. But we had enough people that we brought a teacher to us. And so this lady was helping me with the publishing of this book. And so I was traveling with her to the place where all the printers are, which is a town about an hour away from where we were. And so we were driving. She spoke almost no English. And so I really had to work hard at getting this accomplished. But we howled, we laughed so hard. I don't know, there was just joy because neither of us quite knew what we were doing, but we were going to do it anyway. And I don't know, it was just a sweet experience. The last one that I'll share is the other thing that none of us knew how to do is we were trying to get hooked up to what was going to become the internet. And at that point, it was just, how do you dial up to get a signal to be able to send and receive email? And you had to get this thing called a modem, which, nobody even knew what a modem was. And you had to get it from the telephone company, and you had to hook it up, and the protocols for hooking it up and how you get it to speak, to communicate with their system. I mean, it was beyond all of us. Nobody knew what they were doing. And we were having to do it in Italian, and we were having to do it in a country that was, I mean, even America was just getting started with this. This is early 1989. And I never forget the day we finally got it to work. And it was like, wow. And Lakshman, who was on the other side of the ocean, Swami's secretary, who had given me this assignment, was on the other line at that moment. And he sent an email, and I responded in seconds or minutes. And then he responded back, and it was like, oh my God, we're live, and it's not costing us the moon. It's because these calls from Italy to America could cost $5 a minute. I mean, it was just astronomical. And sending a fax, and even faxes were relatively new at that point. That same thing. I mean, it was an expensive overseas phone call. So we were able to, as a result of this email connection, we started getting the Ananda Village newsletter, the Ananda Villager, I believe it was called at the time. They would put this out on a Thursday afternoon, but they would finish their work, but it was to be printed for Friday to be put in the mailboxes. We would get it Friday morning. We got it before Ananda Village got it, and we were in Italy on the other side of the planet. It was just, I don't know. It was an amazing adventure. I worked with Jopi and, Brahm was, anyway, there were the cast of characters over there. Ram was there, Diana was there. I mean, it was amazing. It was challenging. It was miraculous. It was crazy. I remember it being so cold that I felt like I was walking on a skating rink all winter long there. I put these padding under my shoes, so I had like an inch of wool between me and the ground before my shoe soles anyway. But it was such fun and such a joy. So anyway, now I'm going to turn it over to Nirmala because I've probably talked longer than I should have. But
Why don't you tell the story of calling your dad?
so, okay. So I was trying to reach my dad, who lived in Oshkosh, Wisconsin at the time, and he had a business that included a factory. And when I called, he happened to be out in the factory. Well, now they could page him, using all this sophisticated American technology. But it took him 3 minutes to get to the phone. And those 3 minutes cost me like $15. And I didn't have very much money at that time. And what of it I had to get it changed into lira, not euros. This is pre-euro days. And by the time he got to the phone, it was like, Dad, do you know how much this is costing me? So, God, because he would never call because God forbid, he didn't know what he was calling into. And, to have somebody answer the phone in Italian, it was just like, no, he couldn't bring himself to do that. So anyway, I called him, but it was like,
Mamma mia.
Mamma mia. Anyway, okay, so Nirmala will tell a few stories now also, and I will man the camera. Why don't you go ahead and sit?
Well, my Italian adventure started in 1985. So I came home before Dharmadas left for Italy. Our paths did not cross while we were in Europe. And what had happened was I had been working for Swami, and he had been to Italy and written all of the oratorio music and come back to Ananda and created the choir singing this beautiful music from the Christ Lives in the Holy Land oratorio. And then he wanted to take people back to the Holy Land and sing all this music in all the places where it was inspired. And so he had me be the choir director, and he wanted every person on the pilgrimage to be in the choir. And it was my job to teach them all the parts and direct this choir with, I forget how many people we had, 40 or 50 people, many of whom had never sung before. So it was quite an adventure trying to get these people to understand and be able to sing. So we finally got there to the Holy Land, and it was an amazing pilgrimage, just incredibly beautiful. And we did have every person singing, and sometimes people were just so moved by hearing this music, and the choir sang beautifully. And of course, many of the places where we sang were beautiful churches with marvelous acoustics. So it was quite beautiful. And people would ask if we were a professional choir. And so we did okay on that front, but it was a very challenging assignment. So we ended our pilgrimage by coming to Assisi. And the thought form of having Ananda in Europe, in Italy, was very new. It had just been, I don't know, 2 or 3 years of people at all, Ananda people being there. So when everyone was in Assisi visiting the holy shrines of St. Francis, it was a very blissful time, part of that pilgrimage. And then we all from the pilgrimage went up to Lake Como. This is November. So it's very cold, a lot of snow, a lot of ice. And that is where the first Ananda Center was, because someone had given Swami the opportunity to have, not even rent it. I don't think we were even renting it. She had just let him have it to use for Ananda. But the catch was that it was a summer house. And as I say, this was November. So I remember the little living room that we used for a temple had a little holy water container inside the threshold of the door. When you went in, you were supposed to cross yourself. And the holy water froze in that little container. And it was so cold in that house. There was no heating anywhere. It was so cold that I had to play the harmonium with gloves on. And I cut the fingers out of the gloves, like the old Victorian gloves, so my fingers could find the keys. But it was just stunningly cold. There was only one small room where we would all gather, and there were maybe 10 of us living in this big house. And we had one propane heater, one standing propane heater, and they call them boombalas, which always sounded like a bomb to me, and I was always afraid the thing was going to explode. But we would hover around this bombala trying to get warm, trying to heat this one little room. And each of us would take turns backing up to the bombola to try to get our back warm. Funny to think about in a day like this when it's almost 100 degrees out, but it was freezing there. And so each of us in turn, eventually everybody caught on fire. Their clothes would catch on fire because they got too close to this bombola. But it was so commonplace at that point that we had our system down. We just got the fire out and, was over. No big deal. But it was, and everybody's bathrobe had a big burn mark in the back where they'd gotten too close to the bombola. We had almost no money. It was incredibly difficult to survive there. And I was not vegan at the time, so I was eating dairy and cheese and eggs and butter, and we couldn't afford any of those things. All we had was they made these little loaves of bread that were flat on the bottom and then sort of curved like this, about this long. And we called them torpedoes. So every morning we would each get a torpedo. And there was no butter, but we had been able to afford these big jars of jam, which was basically sugar. So we would slather all this sugar on the bread, and we would pretty much live on these little loaves of bread. Well, wheat and sugar is a weight gaining strategy. And so we all sort of puffed out. It was very interesting. But it was a very blessed time. I remember my mind expanded along with my waistline. But I remember trying to learn Italian. I never really got very proficient at it, but this very kind friend there in Como was attempting to teach me Italian. And she, at one point, when I was repeating something to her, she just started laughing. And and I couldn't get her to stop. It was like, what? And she finally just said, "Your little American accent is so cute." And it was a complete paradigm shift for me because I had grown up in America. This was my first time out of the country. And it was like, wait a minute, Americans don't have accents. Everybody else in the world has an accent. But when we speak American, that's the language. And so I learned in that moment that no, we're just another country. And just like we experience other people's culture and them having an accent when they speak American English, it works the other way too. And it was a bit of a comeuppance to me, and it was very deeply appreciated. It even the playing field, we are not so smart and big, we Americans. It's time for a little bit of humility. So maybe I'll stop there and we can close with a couple more chants.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna switch this back and so
Swami was very inspired by Italy, and during that period of time, he wrote many of these chants that we're singing, and the English for them came later.
So this chant is, I'd like to sing this first in Italian. It has an English translation. Dio nella notte, Lord in the nighttime. And it's nighttime here now. It's finally dark enough that I feel we can justify singing this. But this is particular, the darkness isn't just when the sun goes down. There's a different kind of darkness that comes when we don't understand, we don't necessarily perceive the path forward, the pathway forward. And so take this as a chant to address that and feel the blessings of God, even when we don't understand, or perhaps I should say, especially when we don't understand what's being asked of us, or what is trying to happen is another way to phrase that. Dio nella notte. Excuse me.
When we do this, we have to set the sound levels. Dharmadas has his iPad set.
Dio nella notte, Dio nel buio, seguirò sempre te. Dio nella notte, Dio nel buio, seguirò sempre te. Quando mi perdo, quando piango, so che tu sei con me. Quando mi perdo, quando piango, so che tu sei con me. Vivo solo per amarti, oh Signore. Vivo solo per amarti, oh Signore. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. Lord, when in darkness, Lord, in confusion, always I'll follow thee. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. If I grieve or lose my way, only thou canst comfort me. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. Dio nella notte, Dio nel buio, seguirò sempre te. Dio nella notte, Dio nel buio, seguirò sempre te. Quando mi perdo, quando piango, so che tu sei con me. Quando mi perdo, quando piango, so che tu sei con me. Vivo solo per amarti, oh Signore. Vivo solo per amarti, oh Signore. Vivo solo per amarti, oh Signore. All I live for is to love thee, my eternal friend. All I live for is to love my eternal friend.
Quando mi sveglio.
Okay. And you're going to need the harmonium for that. So I'll sing Quando mi sveglio, which is when I, literally translates to when I awake, when I arise. And this is, in English, this is every morning when I greet the sun. And I'll sing it once in Italian and once in English. And I might actually look at the words for this in case my memory fails me from the Italian. And let's see if I can figure out how to get this thing to help us here. Quando mi sveglio per salutare il sol, quando esco nella città, nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Quando rido e quando piango nei malintesi e nell'amore, nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, Signore, penserò solo a te. Io, sono tu per l'eternità. Io, tuo per l'eternità. Nella sconfitta, nella vittoria, nella vita intorno a me, nel silenzio del mio cuore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, penserò solo a te. Nel lavoro e nel riposo, nella gioia e nel dolore, nel silenzio del mio cuore, penserò solo a te. Nel silenzio del mio cuore, penserò solo a te. Io sono tu per l'eternità. Io tuo per l'eternità. Every morning when I greet the sun, when I move through crowded ways, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. When I laugh, oh, and when I cry with pain, when my best friends misunderstand, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. Dear God, my God, I am thine for eternity. Dear God, my God, I am thine eternally. Though my path lead me over desert sands, though it take me through bitter storms, in my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. When I'm working and when in earth repose, let come victory or low defeat. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. In my heart, Lord, ever so silently, I will always think of thee. I am thine for eternity. Dear God, I am thine eternally. Dear God, my God, I am thine for eternity. Dear God, my God, I am thine eternally. I am thine eternally. So let's close with Joya, Joya, Joya. Seems like a nice way to finish our kirtan. And the Joya, 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 sempre nuova Joya. Joy, 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 ever new joy, or always new joy. Sempre, not siempre like the Spanish. Subtle but notable difference. If you can wiggle that mic with the other, yeah, bring that guy back over. Great. Gioia, 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 sempre nuova gioia. 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 Gioia, gioia, sempre nuova gioia. Gioia, 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 sempre nuova gioia. Gioia, 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 sempre nuova gioia. Gioia, gioia, gioia,
Let's close our satsang by sending out into the world the blessings that we receive from God, His grace, His joy, His healing energy. Let's visualize this world surrounded in that love, in that blessing. And let's chant Om together.
Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. God bless you all. Jai Guru.